Welcome to our cozy corner of tales where magic and adventure await. Tonight, we'll venture into the enchanting world of Scandinavian mythology, where legendary creatures and brave gods roam. From the icy lands of Norway to the mystical forests of Scandinavia, our journey begins with a classic Norse tale. Let's begin our epic story of Thor and Jormungandr, a legendary battle that will leave you on the edge of your seat.
Thor and Jormungandr, Part 1. Welcome back, StoryWaves surfers, to the next album in the Norse mythology series, The Adventures of Thor. In the previous album, we heard about Thor and his hammer, Mjolnir, goddess Idun and her golden apples of immortality, and god Frey, who fell in love with a giantess. In this album, we join Thor on his exciting adventures as he fights the giant Midgard serpent and resorts to trickery to regain his hammer, Mjolnir. He also fights against the fierce giant Hrungnir, who challenges him to a one-to-one combat. So what are we waiting for? Let's ride the story waves. Niflheim was the land of fog and mists, where cold winds blew all year round. Muspelheim was the land of heat and fire, where flames burned bright and hot. In between these two was Midgard, the land of men. This large circular land was covered by the sea on all sides. In summer, when the sun shone brightly, the waters in the sea were calm, but in the winters they rushed upon the shore in great waves and made a terrible noise. Deep within the sea lived the Midgard serpent called Jormungandr. Many, many years ago, when the serpent had grown so big that even the gods could not handle it, the mighty god Odin had him cast into the sea. The serpent now lay flat on the seabed, and it had grown to such an enormous size that its length encircled the whole world. The serpent kept its tail within its mouth and lay without moving for weeks together, so that someone looking over the peaceful ocean would never know that such a monstrous serpent lay within its depths. But when the Midgard serpent was woken from his sleep, his anger was terrible to see. Foam frothed violently on the ocean as the serpent lashed its tail. The waves reached the size of mountains. The spray from the ocean seemed to reach the heavens, and the ships sailing on the ocean were tossed high and low. And so it happened one day that the gods were with the sea god Aegir, and drinking the ale which he had brewed. Soon the ale took over. Aegir looked around and spotting Thor said, "Thor, will you get me a kettle?" Thor, who was always up to any challenge, the harder the better, got up quickly and replied, "Of course I will, but you will have to tell me where to get one." Aegir had no reply to this, and all the other gods also started wondering where they could find a kettle. This was because a very huge kettle was needed when the ale was brewed for the gods of Asgard, and this could not be found at short notice. Finally, Tyr, the god of courage, spoke up. "On the banks of the river Elivaga lives my father, Hymir. He owns a kettle which is very wide and very deep, and can be used to brew ale for the gods." "Do you think we can get it from him?" asked Thor, who wanted to be successful in whatever challenge he undertook. "We will obtain it," said Tyr. "If not by force, then by the use of strategy." Thor donned the disguise of a young man, and they both set off immediately. The journey was long and hard, and finally they reached Hymir's home. They found Tyr's grandmother, who was an ugly giantess, and Tyr's mother, who was a beautiful woman, with a face so radiant that it felt as if the sun always shone on it. As Tyr greeted his mother, she advised them to hide under the big kettles in the hall. Sometimes her husband Hymir came home in great anger, and she did not want him to be cruel to Thor. Hymir came home late that night from a day spent fishing in the deep seas. As he entered the hall, a cold wind swept inside with him, and his clothes and long beard were covered with frost. His beautiful wife greeted him and said, "Our son Tyr, whom we have been searching for so long, has finally come home, and brought home with him our enemy and the protector of the gods. They hide there, behind the pillar." She pointed to a pillar at the other end of the hall. Hymir, now exceedingly angry, thinking that the enemy of the giants was in his home, stared piercingly at the large pillar. Under the force of his glare, the pillar broke into pieces, and 8 kettles fell to the ground with a resounding crash. Only one kettle did not break, and from within it the 2 gods walked out. Hymir was not at all happy to see Thor, but he could not turn him out, and so he ordered 3 large oxen to be served for dinner. Thor was very hungry after the long journey, and his hunger was not satisfied till he had eaten 2 out of the 3 oxen. Seeing his large appetite, Hymir said, "I will have to go fishing tomorrow and catch enough fish to satisfy your hunger." Early the next morning, before the sun rose, Thor heard Hymir getting ready to head out to the sea for a day of fishing. He quickly dressed up and went out to the hall and met him. "Good morning, Hymir," said Thor. "Let me come along to fish with you, for I am very fond of fishing." The giant was not at all happy with Thor's words, as he did not want to share his fishing boat with his enemy. "You are a tiny young man. I can't see you being of any use to me while fishing. If I go far out into the sea as I usually go, and stay for as long as I do, I think you will catch a cold and die," said Hymir as he sneered at Thor. Thor was angry with this insult, and for a minute wished to bash the giant's head with Mjolnir, his hammer, but he held on to his temper. "I will go as far away from the land as you want to go, and I will stay for as long as you want to," said Thor to Hymir. "But what bait do we carry?" "Find something for yourself," said Hymir rudely. Thor went to the herd of Hymir's castle and killed a large oxen, and taking its head along with him as bait, got onto the boat with Hymir. They both pushed the boat away from the land and were soon headed deep into the sea. Hymir sat and rowed in front of the boat, and Thor sat at the rear. Hymir was a very strong rower, but he had never seen the power with which Thor rowed. The whole boat trembled under the force of Thor's rowing. Soon they had reached the place where Hymir usually fished, and Hymir called out to Thor to stop. This brings us to the end of episode 1. The giant Hymir calls out to Thor to stop, for they would soon be at the place where the Midgard serpent lies. Does Thor heed his advice, or go ahead and disturb the Midgard serpent? Find out in episode 2. The end.
As we conclude the tale of Thor and Jormungandr, remember that courage and determination can help overcome even the most daunting challenges. Download the StoryWaves app from Apple or Android app stores to explore more enchanting stories from our Norse collection and cultures around the world. A StoryWaves subscription costs less than $1 a month, making it one of the most affordable ways to bring quality stories to your family. All new stories are available on the StoryWaves app, and the most exciting content is only available on the app. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow StoryWaves on Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify for updates on upcoming content. Thank you warmly for watching.